My name is Major Mark Johnson, and this is my Salvation Army. I have grown up in the Salvation Army all of my life. From a very young child, my parents took me to the Salvation Army as our home church, and it's been a very important factor throughout my entire life. I grew up on a farm just outside of a small town, Fremont, Nebraska, and I didn't really know it growing up at the time, but we were on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. And the Salvation Army officer would drive out to our farm and pick us up and then make sure that we got home. As I attended worship services and other activities, and there was always the spiritual foundation for every activity that we did, that I realized I needed to give my life to God. And it was about the age of 14 that I was wrestling with what I should do with my life and felt very clearly the call of God to serve Him as a Salvation Army officer, as an ordained pastor. Throughout my life, and now 26 years as a Salvation Army officer, the theme of love for God and love for man have been basically two sides of the same coin. One thing that I really appreciate about the Salvation Army is the fact that we wear uniforms. And this uniform identifies who we are. It's not about Mark Johnson, it's about what the Salvation Army represents. People trust the Salvation Army uniform. And it's a high calling. I remember in Chicago at Christmas time, getting into my car and someone knocks on my window and I crack it down just a little bit, because we're in Chicago, and he says, "You with the Salvation Army?" And I said, "Yes." And he throws a $20 bill through the window, doesn't have any idea how that's going to get to where it needs to go. So that's the level of trust that we live with, and we have to maintain that, and that's challenged me. The uniform also protects me. I've been in some of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Chile and in America and felt very safe because the people knew the uniform, and they would watch out for me because I was in the uniform. Yeah, the S's on the Salvation Army uniform stand for Saved to Serve, and it's just a constant reminder to everyone who has committed their life to God through the Salvation Army, either as an ordained minister, an officer, or as a member of our congregation, as a senior or junior soldier, that we're saved to serve. And that's really what life is about, not just for the Salvation Army, but if you look around in our world, that the opportunities, what makes life richer and fuller is when we help someone else. A great example of how this uniform opens doors to ministry and meeting people's needs at the point of need is back on July 7th when here in West Michigan, there was a mass murder, and I contacted our EDS, Emergency Disaster Services leader, and offered to help in any way, and so I ended up on the canteen that night, and it had completed, and the police were wrapping up, and we were still there offering food and refreshments for those who were serving, as well as spiritual comfort. And I believe it was just after midnight, and Chief Belk was actually driving by, and he stopped his car and got out and just looked at every volunteer. There were 4 of us, and looked each one in the eye and said, "Thank you for being here." And as he walked back to his car, I walked with him, and I just asked how he was doing, because I know it had to be incredibly difficult on him personally, even though he's a trained professional. Those situations test us to the core. And I had the opportunity to pray with him for himself as an individual. And those opportunities only happen because of the Salvation Army's commitment to meet need wherever it happens. And I'm just very grateful that those doors will continue to be open, and there will be times in the future when the Salvation Army will be there. The Salvation Army is what we are today because of the generous support of the public and the community. I'm encouraged by the support of people who come and link arms with us and desire to help us accomplish the mission that God has placed before us. but I know who I am today because who God is in me and the ministry of the Salvation Army.